My name is Teresa Larson, and Mary Pasley has graciously allowed me to visit her at Green Hills in Ames, Iowa. And Mary, I'm going to start with a question that I know you know the answer to. Tell me your birth date and where you were born.
I was born in Waterloo, Iowa, on September 14th, 1916.
Well, you're just a young thing. Did you go to school in Waterloo?
No, oh no.
No. How did you
We
get?
moved to Ames. No, I like to tease my husband that I was born in Waterloo because they had a hotel, had a hospital, and Ames was busy building. I agree.
When did your family move to Ames?
When? Nineteen. 1920,
So,
21.
so you started to school in Ames then, as a
Mhm.
youngster. Where did you go to school?
At Whittier.
At Whittier.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about that. Was it fun?
Not particularly, because I lived on this side of the tracks. And I had the dinky tracks and the train tracks to cross. And my mother fussed all the time about it.
Did you think it was dangerous?
Well, the only time was if I were a little late and the trains were coming. I took chances that I probably shouldn't have, but I got along all right.
Mm-hmm. How big was your grade school class? Were there lots of children in your class?
No, because Ames was pretty small. It was much smaller than Boone. Boone was a big town in those days.
When you got to school, what was your classroom like? How did it start out in the day? What subjects did you take?
Oh, we always immediately stood at attention and gave the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And then sometimes we'd sing. We did not sing good morning to you, good morning to you, like there's so many say now. We're all in our places with sunshiny faces. We didn't do that, but we pledged allegiance to the flag. And then we were serious. The teachers didn't stand for any fun. And about the only thing I remember of those days, I had long curls, that kind. And we always had to sit alphabetically. So the same boy always sat behind me. And our desks had ink wells built in them. And he'd stick my curls in the ink wells.
Did he ever get caught?
Oh, yes. It took a while, though, because I had very dark hair. But I dripped, and the teacher noticed it. And she asked about it.
What would happen to a youngster who would have done that to somebody? What was the corrective action?
A spanking.
that might have deterred others from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you sat at a desk and you had an inkwell.
Yeah.
So did you use a fountain pen or to do your writing? No, you know.
They weren't invented then. No, we had just pens and pen points that we stuck in
Okay.
because we had to replace those quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly because a lot of boys like to stick them into other boys.
After grade school, which was pretty serious, what did the children do for fun at that time period in Ames?
Well, I grew up, the 6th Street stopped at Brookridge. It didn't go up to the college then. So all of us who lived in that area thought Brookside Park was our playground, nobody else's. And so we always played in the Brookside Park, and there was a zoo there then. And a very small zoo, but we had a bison and a peacock, and I don't remember, those are the two things I remember mainly, but that was our playground.
Did you play in the stream or the river?
Always. In Squaw Creek, never in the river, but in Squaw Creek. And then we would skate in the wintertime up Squaw Creek, up north. And I remember we had skates that we put on our shoes, like you do roller skates. And when shoe skates came out, my father got me a pair because he thought that would be wonderful. And I remember I skated too far north, up to where I usually went, and if I were tired, I could take the skates off and walk home. But that time with shoe skates, I couldn't. And I was never so tired in my life. And I went back to my old shoe skates after that, and really didn't skate with them. These fancy new shoe skates.
Well, now I'm going to leave grade school and go on up to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me the building and the location of the building where you went to high school.
Well, it's now the City Hall. Well, Old Central had been the high school and the junior high. And it's where the City Hall is now.
Mm-hmm.
And then across the street, they built a high school. And we went there. We had a tunnel built from Central to the new high school, and a tunnel from the new high school down to the field house, which was south of Lincoln Way. Mm-hmm. And that's where our basketball games were held, and drama club had their plays, and the football field was behind the field house. So we could go through tunnels and avoid the busy Lincoln Highway. At that time, we thought it was busy.
So you were in high school in the first part of the 1930s.
Very first.
Very first part of the 1930s. And how did the Depression affect your high school days? In other words, how did the economic times affect your high school days? Or maybe they didn't.
No,
No?
no, I don't remember too much. Well, it was just everybody was in the same boat. It didn't make any difference. And I know my boyfriend, who turned out to be my husband, would call and tell me to cut out the coupon in the Ames trip. And he'd take me to the movie that night. And so it would only cost him a dime for his ticket and nothing for me because I had the coupon from the Ames trip. So we did quite well with the Depression. And 25 cents worth of gas lasted a long time.
Let's start when you first went into high school. What did girls wear to high school at that time?
We wore pleated serge skirts and usually blouses, and then all of a sudden these awful, and they were awful. And my father kept saying, if we couldn't afford anything better, you'd have a fit. But these old cotton sweatshirts that once you washed them, the sleeves would be way down here and they'd be baggy. But that's what we'd wear, would be these sweatshirts. And then these blue pleated skirts and cotton ribbed stockings.
It sounds like you didn't like those cotton rib stockings.
All of us hated them. But then nylons came out. And most of us could not afford the nylons. Plus the fact they told us that you had to put them in the ice box and keep them cold. And I don't know what their excuse was, but that's where our stockings were when we dressed up in the nylons. We'd get them out of the refrigerator and put them on.
How many, excuse me.
By that theory. But we grew up fast because, see, I started driving when I was 12.
Tell me about that. How'd you learn?
Well, I learned with my dad trying to teach my mother. And when she tried the first time, she went through the end of our garage. And Dad told her to get out, and he said, you get in and drive your mother places. She's not to touch the wheel again. So I drove constantly after that.
I don't know what the laws were back then.
We didn't have any laws about driving. And it wasn't until I was 16 that Dad had to take me down to the city hall to get me a license to drive.
Where was your childhood home when you were in high school?
It was on Ridgewood.
You were very close to the high school then. You were 5 or 6 blocks from the high school. Or how far north were you? I should ask that first.
It seemed longer than that because nobody took us to school. We walked, and I had, all of us on Ridgewood and Brookridge had to go over the viaduct on 6th Street. You know where that is?
I do.
Well, at that time it was wood. And in the wintertime, it was, they didn't clean the streets, but it would be all ice. And of course, we didn't wear slacks. They were thought of then. And we'd have to climb on our hands and knees up the top of the viaduct. And I know I'd take my mother's Woman's Home Companion magazine and sit on it to slide down to Northwestern.
I think that sounds pretty efficient to me.
But we had fun.
Mhm. So you had said you grew up pretty fast. Not only did you learn to drive, but did you have other responsibilities like a job or caring for other siblings?
I didn't have anyone else but my father. Oh, thank you. Taking my books back.
We were talking about growing up fast and if you had other responsibilities.
Yes. My dad had me for 1 month every summer, starting in 8th grade. I had to do all the cooking, all the laundry, all the cleaning of the house because he said my mother needed a vacation too. And in those days, you had to boil water and you were down in the basement all morning and washing and then hanging up and then taking them down, and I did the ironing and I bought the groceries and I got the meals. And then, I know I was so proud, electric refrigerators came out. And Dad asked me to go downtown and look at all the refrigerators. There were just two, GE and Frigidaire. GE had the coils up on top, open. And so I went around all the stores that carried them, and I looked at them and I priced them. And I came home and reported to my dad, and he said, "Which one do you recommend?" And I said the Frigidaire, because the GE motor would get all dusty and everything and not work as well. And he said, "How much was it?" And I told him. So he wrote out a check and he said, "You go down and buy it."
Do you
and
have
have them deliver it.
Do you have any idea how old you were or what grade you were in at that time?
I was in 8th grade.
That's a lot of responsibility.
I did it. Well, that old Frigidaire worked for the longest time. And boy, I had more fun cooking with it too. Not cooking, but I had ice cream and
Well, your father sort of encouraged you to be a home economist before other girls did that in high school. Maybe you did take home economics in high school. No, they didn't offer that then.
No, what we had, well, we had, to a certain degree, we had home economics, but we had a nurse teach us how to make a hospital bed, how to turn a patient in the hospital. If any member of your family got sick, you'd be able to handle it. So we'd have like half a semester of that, and then we'd have a half a semester of sewing. And there was a family across the street from us that all the other girls got to make some real pretty skirts and dresses for themselves. But his family across the street had 5 children, and he had lost his job. And the youngest one, her name was Lily, and she wore the raggedest clothes because she had all hand-downs from her older sisters. And Mother said I had to make Lillian a dress, that little girl needed a dress of her own. So I made her a dress, and I took her, and she helped me pick out a pattern that she would like her dress to be like. And then we chose the material that she would like. And I made this dress for her. And then I couldn't get rid of her. She was so grateful. She was on my heels all the time.
Now, did you get a grade for this dress? Did your
Mhm.
teacher
Yeah,
give you a
they
grade?
were
for this?
graded.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope you also got a citizenship award.
No,
For helping
they didn't have
out.
things like that.
So in high school, you would take math and you would take English. Those would be standard, of course. And then maybe some history courses, or
We had history, we had civics, we had, well, we had 2 years of Latin. Now,
Wow.
and that was, everybody took 2 years of Latin.
did a lot of kids from Ames High go off to college then?
Well, quite a few did, not too many.
Mm-hmm.
And now the farm children were responsible for getting into to school themselves. There were no school buses or anything. And they didn't, most of them didn't go on. Some went on to college. And it was easy, for most of them to go to Iowa State. And it was small then, too. And my folks thought, since I was an only child, that I should be sent away and find out how it was to live with other things. So I went away to college.
Mm-hmm. We'll pick that up in just a second. What I was thinking was, when you said 2 years of Latin, that sounded like preparation for college. That's what I was thinking. That
Well,
there.
it was required.
Mm-hmm. And so you took maybe some science, some sciences.
Yes, we didn't have chemistry or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and while we had home ec and nursing, the boys had woodworking and something else. I forget what that was. And in fact, my great-granddaughter is using the sewing box that Bob made for his mother in woodworking class.
That's neat.
He was a year ahead of me.
Well, since you mentioned your boyfriend, who later became your husband, were there school dances?
We should say not. No, dancing was forbidden. College, high school, everything.
Mm-hmm. But you went on dates.
Well, we probably did things we shouldn't have done. I know now, like, I used to ski behind the car. in the streets of Ames. And they'd go circling around, you know, on the breaks, and I'd go skimming around. If my folks knew about that, they would have killed me. We did things like that.
Mhm. Well,
Which were not good, but then it was all innocent.
mhm. But there would have been, for example, at Ames High, there were athletic teams, so you went to
Yes.
basketball games.
And we always beat Boone, who was much larger.
Mhm.
The town was much larger
Mhm.
than Ames. We always beat Boone in basketball and football. In fact, on Labor Day, is that what's in the fall? Well, I know it was Labor Day. The Ames High, Boone High football games were held in the Iowa State football field because Boone closed and Ames closed, and everybody went to the Ames High Boone football game.
That sounds like fun.
It was, and it was bloodthirsty too.
I think there was even a trophy, wasn't there, that went back and forth, whoever was the winner of that game?
There had been, I don't think there was at the time I was in school,
Mm-hmm.
but
With-
it was,
Serious business.
it was.
Bragging rights were on the line.
And, you know, Boone was bigger. And yet, well, it was a thriving railroad town. But I have thought so often, because we had the most wonderful business district, and I don't know what happened to it.
Oh, you're thinking now to present day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Ames High School, which was close
Yeah.
to the business district at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And were there any other traditions that you can think of that Ames High young people observed? I'm trying to say that in a big, open-ended way.
Yeah. Well, the seniors always had skip day.
Tell me about Skip Day.
Uh-huh. And I can't think of anything.
There was, did they have a homecoming game?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And then we had a big dinner afterwards.
Tell me about the dinner. That sounds like fun.
Uh-huh. Our games were in the afternoon because you didn't have lights then. And at the Christian church, which was across from the schools, they had a big dining room, and we'd have a big dinner down there afterwards, and then that's when the trophy was given
Mm-hmm.
and our dinner.
Did they have a homecoming king and queen? No. None of that fancy stuff. No. What about traditions at Ames High, such as, seniors might have one activity, and juniors might have one activity, and sophomores might have a different activity? Was there anything like that, like girls' clubs or boys' clubs or anything like that?
Well, High Y and Girl Reserve were the two main big clubs.
And what did they do?
Well, part of it was religion, which I guess you couldn't have today. But, and they'd have camps. Like we'd go over to Eldora to the camp over there. The girls, the Girl Reserves would. And that would be a big thing. But no, we really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So So there probably wasn't a parking lot for school because kids would walk to school, or
You bet. Well, the college kids, oh, how we hated them because we had to walk. And they were bused. They had to walk too. They weren't picked up at their homes. They would go like to Lynn and Knapp. I can't remember whether they were
Mhm.
cross or not.
they do.
And kids in that area would go to that corner for to get picked up by the bus. And then they'd be taken home for lunch.
Mhm.
And they'd jeer at us when they'd go by in the bus and we'd be walking.
Oh, when you say college kids, you mean the kids who are on the west side of town who lived in the college area. And they would get bused to school, whereas the downtown kids had to walk. Do I understand that right?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes, we walked.
So there might have been a little competition between the downtown kids and the kids of the
We
west
didn't
side.
like them. Because they, at us as they go by, particularly when it was raining or snowing or something.
Do you know who paid for that bus? Did the school system pay for that?
Mhm.
Oh, the school system paid for it. Hmm.
And well, let's say we didn't grow up so fast, but we did a lot of things that you shouldn't have, like skiing behind cars. And Duff Avenue was the best place to be pulled on skis. I don't know why, but you just seemed to reach your arm more.
Now, how far north did Duff Avenue go when you were in high school?
It went up to 13th Street. And then, like north of Ridgewood, now Orchard, well, I'm thinking about Orchard, there was no Orchard Drive then. Brookridge only went up as far as Lee Street at that time,
Mm-hmm.
which has one house on it between Brookridge and Ridgewood.
Mm-hmm.
But north of 13th was sugarcane fields, and then Everett's Flowers grew their own flowers for their flower shop.
That's news to me. Really? Sugarcane north of 13th Street?
And their gardens are up there,
My goodness.
north of 13th and north of the sugarcane fields.
And is that north of 13th on the west side of Grand Avenue? Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Wow. Well, that land up there is flat. It's just
Mhm.
very flat. Yeah.
And they had beautiful gardens, and they built a home up there, and then Dr. Bush built a home.
When you say they, you mean Everett's? Or who built a home up there? I'm sorry, I wasn't following you.
Everett's.
Everett's, okay.
By the garden,
Mm-hmm.
and then Dr. Bush, and then everybody started building north of 13th,
Mm-hmm.
and that ended with sugar cane. But gee, it was fun to swipe with sugar cane and eat it.
Well, those sound like good high school years.
Well, when I was a senior, some parents got together, not mine, because my father didn't believe in dancing. He said it was just a bad excuse for boys to put their arms around a girl. But some parents hired a room at the Sheldon Mine and had a band and had the high school kids come up there and dance if they'd like to. But very few knew how to dance. And then we learned at Charleston.
Mm-hmm. Did you get to go? Did your father let you go?
One reason was that my husband was a year ahead of me, and he was going to Iowa State, so I couldn't go with him anymore because he was in college and I was still in high school. And I had the most wonderful father, but he had rules. And so I went to dances, but I went with high school kids. And you could, like girls would go together. You didn't have to have a date.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was a senior in high school, after baccalaureate, they had a dance, but you had to have a written permission from your parents to say that you could go to the dance, what time you would arrive, and what time you should leave. And so they'd check you. Now, can you imagine that going over the day? But the school had that, and they had this sheet, and as you went in, they checked, and checked the time was correct, and checked when you went left.
What did you do in the summer?
In the
In high
summer,
school.
we lived at Carr's Pool.
You just
But
could you ride a bicycle there, or did you walk?
usually walked,
Mm.
and everybody did.
You didn't have to have a job in the summertime. Some kids in the early 30s had to have jobs.
No, we didn't. It wasn't until detasseling came along that kids started getting jobs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in high school during the summer.
Did you ever detassel?
Hmm?
Did you ever detassel? No, you got to skip that rite of passage.
No, I was cooking at home.
That's right, you're giving your mom a vacation.
Yeah.
So I had promised to follow up on the idea of you going to college. And I'm guessing that not that many girls went to college at that time. So that was pretty unique.
Well, I guess so. I don't know, I never thought about it. I know it was different. There were two of us, the only ones that left Ames. Now some rode the interurban down to Des Moines and went to the business college down there. But Virginia and I went down to Missouri.
Now you went to Stevens College.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you pick that college? Was it a girls' school at that time?
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And yes, we took a bus from Ames to Des Moines. Then we took a Rock Island train from Des Moines to Centralia, Missouri. got off of that and waited several hours and took a bus and went to Columbia.
I'll bet you didn't come home very often because
Well, we didn't get vacation. We got Thanksgiving off, and we got home for Christmas. Period.
Mhm.
That's all.
Mhm.
No break between semesters or anything.
How many years did you go to college at Stevens?
And just two.
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 high school grades and 2 college grades.
Okay. And so then you must have got back together with your boyfriend then.
Yes, I was a college girl then. And my folks even wrote permission to Stevens that if Bob should go down to Columbia, that he had his permission, had my folks' permission to see me.
So when did you get married?
We got married right after he passed the bar. So he finished college and then he had law school. And then when he passed the bar, we got married.
And then did he come back to Ames then and start his practice? No, he took his, yes, he started his practice in Ames.
Yeah.
Yes. And where did you set up housekeeping when you were newlywed in Ames?
We were on Douglas in one of the real old homes, and it had been made into 4 apartments. And we had a bedroom and a living room. Kitchen. With
Multi-purpose room.
it was a very, very small kitchen. But we had an electric refrigerator and we had a little gas stove.
And what year did you get married? I'm sorry.
39.
39. Okay. So you moved back to Ames 1939, set up this little apartment, and your husband started his law practice.
Mhm.
What kind of law did he practice?
Well, the first couple of years it was all that his dad had doing. And he was just getting his own following when he was called into the Army.
Mhm.
So that ended that.
So you had to watch your husband go off to war.
Mm-hmm.
Was that tough?
Well, see, he was called in the 4th of July, 1941. There wasn't a war then.
Oh, that's right. That you're right. But he was
He
called
was
up.
called in for 1 year,
Mm-hmm.
and 6 years later he got out.
What did you do in that time period?
Well, I followed him around with a baby. Then I followed him around with 2 babies. And then he went overseas. I came back to Ames and couldn't find a place to rent. So I lived with my folks for 2 years until I found a little house on Orchard Drive.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the 2 boys and I moved into that.
And so when your husband came back, then he was back in his father's law firm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But by then, maybe he had some more experience and he got some of his own clients.
Oh yes,
Mm-hmm.
he was, well, I didn't know what all he was doing till he got home. See, all we had was an APO address. We didn't know whether they were in the Atlantic or the Pacific
Mm-hmm.
or what they were doing. When he got home, I found out he had been with the British Army. And I thought he'd been with the United States Army all the time. But he was with the British Army.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
So the Pasley name has been connected with the practice of law in Ames for a long time.
since 1906.
1906. Wow.
And Clark will end it
Yeah.
the 1st of June.
So that's more than 100 years of the Pasley name being in the law practice in Ames. Where was the office always like on Main Street or in that general area?
They used to always be on the 2nd floor. And his dad had the 2nd floor above the Ames Trust and Savings Bank on Main Street, which became the First National Bank. And then when Bob took over, my husband took over the law, he had a client that Bob would have to go down Main Street and get in this man's car and conduct law business because a man couldn't go up the steps to the 2nd floor. And this gentleman said, I own a lot and I'll give it to you if you'll build a law office on it so I can walk into your law office.
And did they take him up on it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Who was the person that gave them the lot? Can you remember the name?
No, I can't. There used to be this little, it was one of the first homes that was built in Ames, a little 1-story house that was on it. And he removed the house, this man did.
And where was the general address of that house, or where was that?
Well, the house was, well, I was going to tell you who lived in the house
Oh, okay,
next
go ahead.
to it. That wouldn't help you any. I think it's now on 8th Street, just east of Duff.
Okay.
They really fixed it up to a cute little house.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be on 7th. I've been past it several times since.
But that's a great story that they got sort of a free lot because the guy wanted to be able to come in and do business without having to go upstairs.
Without doing it on Main Street in the car.
That's a good story.
Well, all the law offices were upstairs at that time.
Well, and lots of medical offices were upstairs too before there was a big clinic. I mean, that's where professional offices were
Yeah.
often located.